She had everything money could buy, except the one thing she desperately wanted. He had nothing but the one treasure she coveted most. Their worlds were about to collide in ways neither could imagine. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that explore the unexpected connections that change lives forever. The first time Eliza Montgomery walked into Sunshine Daycare, every parent in the waiting area felt the temperature drop. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the linoleum floor like a countdown, her tailored Armani suit worth more than what most of them earned in 3 months. She didn't wait in line like everyone else. Of course she didn't. "I need to speak with the director," she announced to the receptionist, not bothering with pleasantries. Immediately. From his spot in the corner, Jack Wilson watched the scene unfold while his 4-year-old daughter Lily colored quietly beside him. He recognized Eliza Montgomery instantly. Who wouldn't? Her face was plastered across business magazines as the ruthless CEO who had transformed her father's struggling company into a billion-dollar empire. The Ice Queen of Wall Street, they called her. What he couldn't figure out was what someone like her was doing in a modest neighborhood daycare center. Ms. Montgomery, the center's director, Mrs. Chen, emerged from her office with a polite smile. "We weren't expecting you until next week." "I don't like to be predictable," Eliza replied coolly. "I need to see the facility now." Jack caught Eliza's gaze for just a moment as she scanned the room. Her eyes were startlingly blue, calculating, as if she were assessing the market value of everyone present. When she looked at Lily, something flickered across her face, so brief he almost missed it. Longing? Impossible. He didn't think much of the encounter until 3 days later, when he found himself alone with Eliza Montgomery in the daycare parking lot, rain pouring down around them, and his car refusing to start. "Daddy, it's cold," Lily whimpered, her small hand clutching his. Jack tried the ignition again. "Nothing. I know, sweetheart. We'll figure something out." A sleek black Tesla pulled alongside them, the window rolling down to reveal Eliza's perfect face. "Car trouble?" Before he could answer, she continued, "Get in. I'll drive you home." "That's really not necessary. It's raining, you have a child, and I'm offering a solution. Don't be stubborn." 20 minutes later, they sat in awkward silence outside his modest apartment building. Lily had fallen asleep in the back seat, surrounded by the luxury of hand-stitched leather. "Thank you," Jack said finally. This was unexpected. Eliza stared straight ahead. "I'm not completely heartless, despite what the press says." "I never thought you were." She turned to him then, her expression unreadable. "I've been watching you with your daughter." Jack tensed. "Excuse me?" "You're good with her. Patient. Loving." She spoke the words as if they were foreign concepts she was trying to understand. "How do you do it? Raise a child alone?" "I just do. She's my world." Eliza nodded, then reached into her purse and handed him a business card. "I want to talk to you about something. Call me tomorrow." Before he could respond, she added, "It's a business proposition. One that could change both our lives." Jack stared at the card long after her car disappeared into the night. What could Eliza Montgomery possibly want from a struggling single father who could barely make rent? He found out the next day, when against his better judgment, he called the number. "I want a baby," she said without preamble when they met at her penthouse office. "And I want you to help me." Jack nearly choked on his water. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not like that," she clarified, rolling her eyes. "I need a surrogate, and I need someone to teach me how to be a parent. I've interviewed dozens of candidates for both roles, but none of them are right." "And you think I am? Why me?" Eliza walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Because you love your daughter more than anything in this world. I can see it. And because you need money." The bluntness of her assessment stung, but he couldn't deny the truth of it. Since his wife's death 2 years ago, he'd been drowning in medical bills and struggling to provide for Lily while working 2 jobs. "I'm not selling my parenting skills," he said firmly. "I'm not asking you to. I'm offering you a job. A well-paid one." She turned to face him. "Be my parenting consultant. Help me find the right surrogate. Guide me through this process. And what do you know about being a parent? You work 18-hour days. You run a corporate empire." "I can change," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No offense, Ms. Montgomery, but people like you don't change." "Not really." Her eyes flashed. "People like me? People who see everything as a transaction. Parenthood isn't something you can master by throwing money at it or hiring the right consultant." He expected her to throw him out. Instead, she did something that shocked him more. Her perfect composure cracked, just slightly. "My mother died when I was 6, she said quietly. "My father buried himself in work. I was raised by a series of nannies, none of whom stayed longer than a year. I built this company because it was the only way to earn my father's approval." She paused. "I don't want to be that kind of parent. I want to be better. But I don't know how." For the first time, Jack saw beyond the polished exterior to the vulnerable woman beneath. "Why now? Why a baby?" Eliza hesitated. "I was diagnosed with endometriosis last year. If I want a biological child, it's now or never. And I've realized that all of this," she gestured to her empire, "means nothing if I have no one to share it with." Jack thought of Lily, of her small hand in his, of bedtime stories and scraped knees and butterfly kisses. Of all the things money couldn't buy. "I'll think about it," he said finally. As he left her office, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at a crossroads. Whatever he decided would change everything, for him, for Lily, and for the woman who seemed to have everything except what mattered most. What he didn't know then was how deeply their lives would become intertwined, or how the arrogant billionaire would be transformed by the journey ahead. Or how much he himself would change in the process. The following week, Jack found himself back in Eliza's office, having made his decision after days of internal debate. "Before I agree to anything," he said, "I need to understand exactly what you're asking of me." Eliza sat behind her imposing desk, fingers steepled. "It's simple. I need guidance on becoming a parent. Everything from choosing a surrogate to preparing for a baby to understanding what a child needs beyond the basics." "And what makes you think I'm qualified?" "I've done my research, Mr. Wilson. Before becoming a full-time father, you were a child development specialist with a master's degree in early childhood education. You left your career to care for your daughter after your wife's illness." Jack stiffened. "You investigated me?" "I investigate everyone I consider working with." She said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Your credentials are impressive, but it's your relationship with Lily that convinced me. You're exactly what I need." "And what are you offering in return?" "A generous salary. Full benefits. Flexible hours that work around Lily's schedule. And," she hesitated, "funding for her education. All the way through college." The offer was too good to refuse, especially with Lily's future at stake. But something still didn't sit right. Why not just hire a nanny or a parenting coach? There are professionals who do this for a living. Eliza's expression hardened. "I told you. I was raised by nannies. I won't do that to my child. So instead you're hiring me to teach you how not to be like your father?" Jack couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "Precisely." She stood up, smoothing her impeccable suit. "Do we have a deal?" Against his better judgment, Jack agreed. What he didn't tell Eliza was that he had his own reasons for accepting. Beyond the money, beyond securing Lily's future, he saw something in Eliza that reminded him of himself after losing his wife, someone desperately trying to fill a void, someone who needed more than they were willing to admit. Their arrangement began the following Monday. Jack arrived at Eliza's penthouse to find her on a video call, barking orders at someone on the other end. "The merger goes through today or heads will roll," she was saying. "I don't care what excuses they're making." She ended the call when she noticed him. "You're early." "Actually, I'm right on time." Eliza checked her watch and frowned. "So you are." "I'm not used to people being punctual." Lesson 1 in parenting, Jack said. Children need consistency and reliability. Being on time matters. She nodded, making a mental note. What's lesson 2? Creating a safe, nurturing environment. He glanced around the sterile penthouse with its modern art and sharp edges. This place isn't exactly child-friendly. I'll hire a decorator. That's not what I meant. Jack sighed. A home needs to feel lived in. Personal. This looks like a museum. Eliza looked around as if seeing her space through new eyes. I'm rarely here. It's just a place to sleep between meetings. That will have to change. Children need presence, not presents. They need your time, your attention. I can adjust my schedule. Can you? Jack challenged. When was the last time you took a day off? Eliza's silence was answer enough. Over the next few weeks, their sessions continued. Jack brought Lily along sometimes, using her as a living example of child development and needs. To his surprise, Eliza was an attentive student, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. But there remained a wall between her theoretical understanding and emotional connection. That changed the day Lily got sick at daycare. Jack was in a meeting with Eliza and potential surrogates when his phone rang. Seeing the daycare's number, he excused himself. Mr. Wilson, Lily has a fever of 102, the nurse explained. She's asking for you. I'll be right there, he promised, returning to the meeting room. I have to go. Lily's sick. Eliza dismissed the surrogate candidates without hesitation. I'll drive you. That's not necessary. It's faster than waiting for a cab. At the daycare, they found Lily curled up on a cot, her face flushed with fever. When she saw Jack, she reached for him with a weak "Daddy." He gathered her into his arms, feeling her burning skin against his neck. I'm here, sweetheart. Daddy's got you. To his astonishment, Eliza stepped forward and placed a cool hand on Lily's forehead. We should get her to a doctor. She needs rest and fluids. If the fever doesn't break by morning. I have a pediatrician on call, Eliza interrupted. He'll meet us at your apartment. Jack started to protest, but Lily whimpered in discomfort. Okay, he conceded. An hour later, Eliza's personal physician confirmed it was just a virus that needed to run its course. After he left, Jack expected Eliza to leave as well. Instead, she rolled up the sleeves of her silk blouse. What can I do to help? Jack was too exhausted to question her motives. There's children's Tylenol in the bathroom cabinet. And she'll need cool compresses for her forehead. To his surprise, Eliza moved through his small apartment with efficiency, returning with the medicine and a bowl of cool water with cloths. She watched carefully as Jack coaxed Lily to take the medicine, then gently placed a compress on her forehead. Like this? Eliza asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Jack nodded. That's perfect. They took turns sitting with Lily through the afternoon and into the evening. Jack noticed how Eliza's phone kept buzzing with messages she ignored, something he'd never seen her do before. Don't you need to get back to the office? He asked when Lily finally fell asleep. Eliza shook her head. Some things are more important. The simple statement hung in the air between them, a revelation that seemed to surprise Eliza as much as it did Jack. Later, as they sat in his small kitchen drinking coffee, Eliza asked, Is it always this terrifying? What? Parenthood. The constant fear that something could happen to them. Jack smiled sadly. That never goes away. You just learn to live with it. How did you manage when your wife was sick? Taking care of her and Lily? The question caught him off guard. They rarely discussed his past. One day at a time, he said finally. Some days were harder than others. But Marie wanted Lily to have as normal a childhood as possible, so we focused on creating good moments whenever we could. You loved her very much. It wasn't a question, but Jack answered anyway. She was my whole world. Until Lily came along, and then my world expanded. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. I've never loved anyone like that. I'm not sure I know how. The vulnerability in her admission touched something in Jack. It's not something you learn from a book or a consultant. It happens when you stop seeing relationships as transactions. Is that what you think I'm doing? Treating this baby as a transaction? Aren't you? You're approaching parenthood like a business acquisition. Find the right surrogate, hire the right consultant, problem solved. Eliza flinched. That's unfair. Is it? You want a baby because your biological clock is ticking and you've checked every other box on your life plan. But children aren't achievements, Eliza. They're people with needs and feelings that don't always align with your schedule. He expected her to lash out, to fire him on the spot. Instead, she looked down at her hands. My father used to say emotions were a weakness in business, she said quietly. I learned to suppress them so well that sometimes I wonder if I'm capable of feeling anything deeply anymore. Before Jack could respond, Lily called out from the bedroom. He went to check on her, and when he returned, Eliza was putting on her coat. I should go, she said. Will you be okay with her tonight? We'll be fine. This isn't my first rodeo. At the door, Eliza paused. Thank you, Jack. Not just for today, but for your honesty. It's refreshing. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. After she left, Jack sat in the quiet apartment, replaying their conversation. For the first time, he'd glimpsed the woman behind the billionaire facade, someone lonely, someone searching for connection, someone afraid of repeating the patterns of her own childhood. And despite his better judgment, he found himself caring about what happened to her. The weeks that followed brought unexpected changes. Eliza began clearing her schedule for their sessions, treating them not as business meetings but as genuine opportunities to learn. She asked questions about Jack's experiences as a parent, listened to stories about Lily's infancy, and even began reading the parenting books he recommended. Most surprising was her growing relationship with Lily. What began as awkward interactions evolved into something warmer as Eliza learned to meet Lily at her level. She sat on the floor to play with dolls, allowed her perfect manicure to be ruined during finger painting sessions, and never complained when Lily's sticky hands touched her designer clothes. One Saturday, Eliza invited them to her penthouse, which had undergone a transformation. Gone were the sharp edges and sterile surfaces. The space was warmer now, with comfortable furniture and even a small play area set up for Lily. What do you think? Eliza asked, uncharacteristically nervous as they entered. It's different, Jack admitted, watching Lily immediately gravitate toward the toys. I took your advice about creating a child-friendly environment. She hesitated. I've been thinking about moving, actually. Finding a place with a yard, maybe near a good school. Jack raised an eyebrow. That's a big change from downtown penthouse living. A lot of things are changing, she said softly, her eyes following Lily. Later, while Lily napped on the couch, Eliza showed Jack the room she'd designated as a nursery. It was still empty except for paint swatches on the wall. I can't decide on a color, she admitted. Yellow seems too obvious. Blue too cold, and pink or blue feels too gendered. The color doesn't matter as much as you think, Jack said. What matters is that you'll be here, in this room, at 3 a.m. when the baby won't stop crying." Eliza nodded, her expression serious. "I've been restructuring the company. Promoting my COO to handle daily operations. I'm planning to work remotely 3 days a week once the baby comes." Jack couldn't hide his surprise. "That's a significant change." "I told you I could change," she said, a hint of her old defensiveness returning. "I'm starting to believe you." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a moment of understanding, of mutual respect that hadn't been there before. That evening, after dinner, Eliza brought out a folder and placed it on the table. "I've narrowed down the surrogate candidates to 3. I'd value your opinion." Jack reviewed the files carefully. "They all seem qualified." "Have you met them in person?" "Yes. Multiple times." She hesitated. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you." Her serious tone made him look up. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about the father." "You mean the sperm donor?" "Yes." Eliza took a deep breath. "I've interviewed several candidates, but none of them feel right. And then I realized. I already know someone with the qualities I'd want my child to have. Someone kind, patient, intelligent. Someone who understands what it means to be a good parent." Jack froze as her meaning became clear. "Eliza. I'm not proposing anything romantic," she clarified quickly. "This would be a business arrangement. You would be compensated, of course, and could be as involved or uninvolved in the child's life as you wish." "You want me to father your child as a business arrangement?" The words tasted bitter in his mouth. That came out wrong. For once, Eliza seemed flustered. "What I meant was..." "I know what you meant." Jack stood up, needing distance. "You still don't get it, do you? You can't approach parenthood like a corporate merger. You can't just select the optimal genetic material and expect everything to work out. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? You're still trying to control every variable, to ensure the perfect outcome. But children aren't predictable. They're messy and complicated, and they don't care about your 5-year plan." Eliza's face hardened. "I thought you of all people would understand." "Understand what? That you want to use me as a genetic donor because I check all the right boxes? Because my daughter turned out well, so you figure my DNA must be good quality? That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is treating parenthood like a transaction." Jack gathered Lily's things. "I think we're done for today." As he buckled a sleepy Lily into her car seat, Eliza followed them to the elevator. "Jack, please. I didn't mean to offend you." "I'm not offended," he said, though they both knew it was a lie. "I just think you need to reconsider what you're really looking for." The elevator doors closed on Eliza's stricken face, and Jack leaned against the wall, wondering why her proposal had upset him so deeply. It wasn't just the transactional nature of it, it was the realization that despite everything, Eliza still saw him as a means to an end rather than a person with feelings of his own. Feelings that, he was beginning to realize, had grown complicated where she was concerned. For the next week, Jack avoided Eliza's calls. He told himself it was professional boundaries, that he needed time to consider whether he could continue working with her. But the truth was, her proposal had forced him to confront emotions he wasn't ready to acknowledge. Then came the text that changed everything. "I need to see you. It's important. Please." The "please" was what got him. In all their time together, he'd rarely heard Eliza use that word. When he arrived at her penthouse, she looked different, softer somehow, in jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual power suit. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore no makeup. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading him to the living room where tea waited. "No assistants, no surrogate files, no business agenda. You said it was important." Eliza nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I owe you an apology. What I proposed was insensitive and, as you pointed out, transactional. I've been thinking about what you said, about why I want a child in the first place. Jack waited, sensing she needed to find her own way through this. When my mother died, she continued, my father shut down emotionally. The only time he showed any interest in me was when I excelled at something, school, sports, later in business. I learned that achievement was the only path to connection. She looked up at him. I don't want that for my child. I want them to know they're loved unconditionally. That's a good start, Jack said gently. But I'm afraid. The admission seemed to cost her. What if I don't know how to love that way? What if I become my father despite my best intentions? For the first time, Jack saw past the billionaire to the wounded child she had once been, a little girl desperate for her father's approval, learning to equate love with achievement. The fact that you're asking these questions means you're already different from him, he said. Love isn't something you perfect before you begin. It's something you learn by doing, by making mistakes and trying again. Eliza's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I've cancelled the surrogate interviews. What? Why? Because you were right. I was approaching this all wrong. Trying to control every variable instead of preparing myself to be the parent a child deserves. She took a deep breath. I'm going to take some time. Maybe volunteer with children, see if this is truly what I want or just another box I'm trying to check. Jack felt a surprising mix of emotions, pride in her self-awareness, respect for her decision, and something else he wasn't ready to name. That sounds like a wise choice. I understand if you don't want to continue our arrangement, she added. But I'd still value your guidance, if you're willing. I think we could use a reset, Jack admitted. Start over as friends, maybe. Without the consultant-client dynamic. Eliza smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. I'd like that. As he left that night, Jack realized something had fundamentally shifted. For the first time, he was seeing Eliza as a whole person, flawed, complex, and genuinely trying to grow. And she, perhaps, was finally seeing him the same way. Spring turned to summer, and their relationship evolved in unexpected ways. Without the pressure of the surrogate timeline, Eliza relaxed into a different rhythm. She began volunteering at a children's hospital on weekends, reading to kids in the oncology ward. She invited Jack and Lily to museums, parks, and once, memorably, to a messy cooking class where they all ended up covered in flour. Jack watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and caution. The Ice Queen was thawing, revealing a woman with a quick wit, a surprisingly goofy sense of humor, and a depth of compassion he hadn't initially seen. But he kept his growing feelings carefully guarded, reminding himself of the vast differences in their worlds. One warm July evening, they sat on a blanket in the park while Lily played nearby with other children. Eliza had brought an elaborate picnic, complete with Lily's favorite foods. She's getting so big, Eliza observed, watching Lily navigate the playground with confidence. When I first met her, she was so shy. Kids change quickly at this age, Jack agreed. Sometimes I look at her and still expect to see the baby she was. Do you ever think about having more children? Eliza asked, her tone carefully casual. Jack considered the question. After Marie died, I couldn't imagine it. Being a single parent is hard enough with one child. But lately... He trailed off, not ready to admit how his perspective had shifted. Lately? Eliza prompted. I've been reminded that family can look different ways, he said finally. That there's more than one path to creating a home. Eliza nodded, her eyes on Lily. I've been thinking about adoption. Really? There are so many children who need homes. Children who already exist in the world, waiting for someone to love them. She turned to him. What do you think? I think that's a beautiful idea, he said honestly. But it's still a huge commitment. Are you sure you're ready? I'm getting there. She hesitated. I've made other changes too. I bought a house. In your neighborhood, actually. Jack stared at her. You're moving to Brooklyn. The penthouse never felt like a home. And I want to be closer to. She stopped, then continued more carefully, to the kind of community I'd want my child to grow up in. There was something in her voice, a question she wasn't quite asking. Before Jack could respond, Lily came running over, demanding they watch her go down the big slide. The moment passed, but Jack found himself thinking about it long after they'd said goodbye that evening. 2 weeks later, Eliza invited them to see her new house. It was nothing like Jack had expected, not a mansion or a luxury townhouse, but a modest brownstone with a small backyard and a tree-lined street. Inside, the rooms were warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture and space for a family to grow. What do you think? She asked as they finished the tour. It's perfect, Jack said, meaning it. It feels like a home. That's what I was hoping for. She knelt down to Lily's level. And what do you think, Miss Lily? Do you like my new house? Lily nodded enthusiastically. Can I see my room again? Jack raised an eyebrow. Your room? Eliza flushed. I may have set up a guest room with Lily in mind. For when you visit. The implication that they would be regular visitors hung in the air between them. Later, after Lily had exhausted herself exploring the backyard, she fell asleep on the couch. Jack and Eliza sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset. I have something to tell you, Eliza said after a comfortable silence. I've been approved as a foster parent. Jack turned to her in surprise. That's wonderful. When did this happen? I've been working on it for months. The home study was completed last week. She looked nervous, a rare expression for her. There's a sibling group, a 7-year-old boy and his 4-year-old sister. Their mother died of an overdose, and they've been in the system for 8 months. They need a permanent placement. And you're considering taking them? She nodded. I meet them next week. If we connect, they could move in by the end of the month. Jack felt a surge of pride. That's a big step. I'm terrified, she admitted. What if I'm terrible at this? What if they hate me? You won't be perfect. No parent is. But you'll learn, and you'll love them, and that's what matters most. He hesitated, then added, and you're not alone in this. You have friends who will help. Eliza's hand found his on the step between them. I was hoping you might come with me. When I meet them. If you don't mind. The touch of her hand sent warmth through him. I'd be honored. They sat in silence as the stars began to appear, neither pulling away from that simple point of connection. The following week, Jack accompanied Eliza to the foster care agency. He watched as she knelt down to introduce herself to Marcus and Zoe, offering them stuffed animals she'd carefully selected based on the information their caseworker had provided. Her hands trembled slightly, the only outward sign of her nervousness. My house has a backyard, she told them. And I was thinking we could plant a garden together, if you'd like that. Marcus, solemn and protective of his little sister, asked, Can we stay together? They said sometimes brothers and sisters get split up. Always together, Eliza promised. I would never separate you. By the end of the visit, Zoe was sitting in Eliza's lap, showing her a drawing, while Marcus had cautiously begun asking questions about the house and the neighborhood. As they were leaving, he tugged on Eliza's sleeve. The lady said you're rich, he said bluntly. Is that true? Eliza knelt to his level. I have been fortunate, yes. But that's not what's important. What is important, he challenged. That you and Zoe feel safe and loved. That we become a family, whatever that looks like. Marcus considered this. Our mom loved us, but she was sick. She couldn't take care of us right. I know, Eliza said gently. And I'm so sorry about that. I can't replace your mom, and I would never try to. But I would like to give you a home, if you'll let me. The boy nodded, his eyes too old for his 7 years. We'll think about it. In the car afterward, Eliza was quiet, processing the meeting. They've been through so much, she finally said. They have, Jack agreed. But kids are resilient, especially when they have stability and love. Do you think I can do this? Be what they need? Jack looked at her, really looked at the woman who had transformed from the ice queen he'd first met to someone capable of such vulnerability and growth. I think you already are, he said softly. 3 weeks later, Marcus and Zoe moved into Eliza's home. The transition wasn't smooth, there were tantrums and tears, moments of fear and testing boundaries. But there were also bedtime stories and pancake breakfasts, trips to the park and movie nights on the couch. Jack and Lily became regular fixtures in their lives. At first, it was under the guise of helping Eliza navigate the challenges of sudden parenthood. But as summer turned to fall, they all recognized it had become something more. They were becoming a blended family in all but name. On a crisp October evening, after the children had gone to bed, Jack and Eliza sat on her back porch, mugs of tea warming their hands. Marcus asked me something interesting today, Eliza said. What's that? He wanted to know if you were my boyfriend. She kept her eyes on the stars above them. I wasn't sure what to tell him. Jack's heart quickened. What did you say? I told him we were friends. Good friends. She turned to look at him. But I've been wondering if that's all we are. The question hung between them, full of possibility. When we first met, Jack said carefully, I thought you were the most arrogant person I'd ever encountered. Eliza laughed softly. I was. And now I think you're one of the bravest. Watching you with Marcus and Zoe, seeing how you've opened your heart to them. He set down his mug and took her hand. I think we stopped being just friends a long time ago. So what are we? She whispered. Instead of answering with words, Jack leaned forward and kissed her gently. When they pulled apart, Eliza's eyes were shining. I never expected this, she admitted. When I walked into that daycare center, I was looking for a solution to a problem. I never imagined I'd find a family. Life rarely goes according to plan, Jack said, thinking of all the twists and turns that had brought them to this moment. Sometimes it gives us exactly what we need, not what we thought we wanted. Eliza rested her head on his shoulder, their hands still intertwined. Do you remember what you asked me that day in my office? When I said I wanted a baby and asked for your help? I asked, why me? I think the universe was answering a question I didn't even know I was asking, she said softly. It wasn't about having a baby. It was about finding love, finding family, finding home. Above them, the stars continued their ancient patterns, witnessing the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for but both had desperately needed, a second chance at love, and a family created not by blood but by choice. 1 year later, Eliza stood in the courthouse, her hand trembling slightly as she signed the adoption papers making Marcus and Zoe legally her children. Jack stood beside her, Lily holding his hand, all of them dressed in their finest clothes for the occasion. Congratulations, Ms. Montgomery, the judge said warmly. They're officially yours now. Thank you, Your Honor, Eliza replied, her voice thick with emotion. Outside on the courthouse steps, the children ran ahead, Lily showing the younger Zoe how to twirl in her new dress while Marcus pretended not to care about such childish things, though his smile betrayed him. They look happy, Jack said, watching them. They are happy, Eliza agreed. We all are. She looked down at the simple diamond ring on her left hand, still new enough that she sometimes caught herself staring at it in wonder. Jack had proposed on Christmas morning, with all 3 children helping him plan the surprise. Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up? She asked. That day when I walked into the daycare? Jack shook his head. Not in my wildest dreams. The arrogant billionaire and the struggling single dad? It sounds like a bad movie plot. Eliza laughed, the sound free and unrestrained, so different from the controlled, calculated woman she had once been. I was thinking about that day, she said. When I asked if you could help me have a baby, and you asked, why me? I didn't have a good answer then. And now? Now I know it was the best question anyone ever asked me. It forced me to examine what I really wanted, what I was really looking for. She looked at their blended family, Lily now teaching both Marcus and Zoe some elaborate hand-clapping game. It wasn't a baby I needed. It was this. All of this. Jack pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. For what it's worth, I think you would have been a wonderful mother, even then. You just needed to believe it yourself. I had a good teacher, she said, leaning into him. And now we get to learn the rest together. As they walked down the courthouse steps to join their children, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the cold, calculating businesswoman who saw a child as another achievement to check off her list, to a mother who understood that love wasn't something you could buy or control, it was something you gave freely, with no guarantees except the joy of the giving itself. Race you to the car. Marcus called to his new sisters, and the three children took off across the plaza. Shall we? Jack asked, offering his hand. Eliza took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. Always. Together, they followed their children into the bright afternoon, into the future they would build together, a future neither of them had planned but both had found in asking and answering that simple question, why me? If you enjoyed this story of unexpected connections and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us family isn't always about blood, sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most. Share in the comments if you've ever had a chance encounter that changed your life in ways you never expected.